Hello and welcome. I am Debbie Epstein Henry. I'm the founder of DEH Consulting, Speaking, and Writing, as well as an executive consultant at Axiom. I'm delighted today to have the opportunity to interview my friend and colleague, Nancy J. Laben. She is Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer at Booz Allen Hamilton. How are you,
I'm
Nancy?
great. It's so good to see you.
Really, really great to see you. And we have a lot to discuss. So I want to
We
dig
do.
right in. Today's topic, of course, is setting 2021 goals while managing increased workloads and smaller budgets. I imagine you're living and breathing this every moment.
Every living moment and sometimes in my sleep.
Oh, that's not good. Well, let's dig in. And I just want to share with our audience that we first met in 2015 when you were a panelist for me at an event for the National Association of Women Lawyers. And the title of that program is very apropos of today, which is Risk Taking. It's time to jump in the pool. And I want to start our conversation by you telling us a little bit about your career path. And in doing so, share some of the prior risk taking that you've done in your career and how that's helping you with the risks you're now facing as we explore today's topic.
Sure. Well, thank you again so much. So much fun to be with you. My career is actually the intersection of goal setting and risk taking. I knew at age 12 that I wanted to be a lawyer. I took stock of what I did well, and I think it was talking at the time. And I thought, who talks for a living? Lawyers. It didn't hurt that my Nana, my grandmother, was one of the first female lawyers on the East Coast. So she
Yeah.
really served as a role model for me. So at age 12, I told everybody I was going to law school. I was going to become a lawyer. I think I might have said I was going to become a Supreme Court justice. So my mom went out and bought me a gavel that is 3 feet long. That didn't come to pass.
Not
But
yet.
not yet. That's true. There's still time. There is still time.
Right.
And so as I went through law school, I realized I wanted to be a business lawyer, and so chose to go straight in house. I never have worked in a law firm. And of course, when I chose to do that, everybody in my law school class, except for three of us, went to clerkships or went to Wall Street or other large firms. And I was told, oh, you're starting your career off wrong. This is a huge risk. You won't be trained well enough. No one will hire you. But I knew that was what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be actively involved with a client and help make the decisions that mattered. And so I went off and did that. And I grew up in Japan. So I always knew that I wanted to work internationally. And so I was offered the opportunity eventually to move overseas and practice from Hong Kong, which was great because earlier on in my career, I'd been told I couldn't move overseas because I was a woman. That's a whole other issue.
Right.
But I knew that I wanted to do it, but very senior people in the firm who offered me the opportunity, this is when I was at Accenture, told me, don't do it. You are going to kill your career. It'll be out of sight, out of mind. You won't be able to come back. You will be stuck in some remote backwater. And so, fortunately, I didn't listen to them. I ran to the edge of the cliff and jumped. And fortunately, what they predicted also did not come true. And so I believe that the continuous changes in my career and the risks that I've taken have really propelled my career. And I keep changing it up and probably going against some wisdom.
But important follow-up is what gave you the confidence when you were at Accenture to disregard that other advice that was given to you, and what made you make that decision that I'm going to go to Hong Kong and I'm just going to disregard these other ideas?
So I think it was a couple of things. One, it was a goal that I had. I knew I wanted to work overseas. I felt I knew, of course, you learn new things when you get there, what it would be like. I thought the idea of having my quote unquote own shop, of building my own team, when you're that far away from headquarters, you get a little bit more leeway. All of those things appealed to me, and that was part of my goal setting. I also had support. My husband was incredibly supportive. He's also a lawyer. But we decided that this was something, because I wanted to do it, that we could make that transition. And I actually reached out and got commitments from people who saw it as an opportunity as opposed to a risk. and had them stay in touch with me. I stayed in touch with them. So I really felt like I could handle it. I could manage it. And what's interesting to me about that, this was years ago, we're talking 1994 at the time. At the time, the whole sociological belief was women don't take risks.
Right.
And for whatever reason, was it because they're caregivers in the majority and they don't want to put that, up for grabs, that they were concerned about it. But more recently, which is especially important now in time of COVID, the studies have shown that women, in fact, do take risks when they have a support environment and when they know that they will have that the ability to manage it. So I was very fortunate early on that I had that.
It's interesting. And you also talked about how your career has really been the intersection of risk and goal setting. So talk about how that context and that experience that you've had has positioned you to have the confidence to lead and set goals, again, in a very risky environment that we're in right now.
So knowing how it's worked successfully, just personally for me, and then seeing how it works with other organizations is really how I've approached it, and that's why I have the confidence to do it. The leadership element, I think that's something you learn and you can educate yourself about. I was very fortunate. I went to Smith College, an all-women's university, and there was never a question that women were leaders. It was just, how were you going to lead? How are you going to think about your leadership definition? And so that just seemed to work. Now, there are days where I feel like, yes, I've got this. And there are days that I think, maybe I should have done something else. But most of the time I have the confidence to do it.
Right. So I want to get into the goal setting more specifically and just want to encourage our audience to go to the comment box throughout our conversation and feel free to put in comments and questions, and I will intersperse those in my questions throughout our conversation. So please do so. And I want to get, like I said, more specific into the goal setting. So as markets shift and budgets contract and workloads expand and the world continues to grapple with a global pandemic and a reckoning on race, how are you prioritizing your team's goals and expectations in planning for 2021?
So I think about goal setting and goal prioritization as a 3D puzzle. Those balls that you never can actually complete on your coffee table.
Right.
And so first off, you have to start with a couple of assumptions or a couple of understandings in my case. So first off, I run this team as a business. Not that we are going to make a profit, but we need to understand the needs and wants and desires and wishes of our clients. In this case, our internal clients, but also our external clients. Booz Allen sits at the intersection of mission and technology. Mm-hmm. And so really understanding the mission of the client is hugely important. And that, of course, translates to the needs of our internal clients. We have to find a way to meet those needs in an efficient and effective way. You cannot just throw money or people at a problem. You have to think about what makes the most sense. And then you have to set expectations with your clients and with your team members. And make sure everybody's on the same page as to what it will take. And in order to do that, you have to continuously look for those efficiencies. You have to be a continuous learner, and you have to look for technology where it can help and where it can work. And I say 3D because understanding the key internal clients in the marketplace, understanding the corporate needs, and understanding the needs of my various stakeholders, right? I can't choose not to defend a lawsuit, even though I would like to put money somewhere else. I can't choose not to file with the SEC, for example. And so balancing those intersections of the board and our regulators and all of that is how I kind of think about what do I need for my goals and my priorities. So in order to do that, I start with the end in mind. What does success look like? Who's involved in it? How will I know when I achieve that success point? How will others know because it's very important when you are an internal support function to be able to demonstrate those successes. People are very focused on what their roles are. And so unless you tell them, hey, we've done a great job at this, or we've done an amazing job at that, they often only think, well, you're a cost center and we have to cut your budget. And so you have to really think about how do you get everybody to buy in. So when you have that framework, I then look at what pain can we tolerate? What I mean is, what hiring changes do we need to make? What cost cutting do we need to have? And some of that is painful. You align that to the key strategic needs. So we've got things we've done for 106 years. That's how old the company is. Are there things that I can take off everybody's plate and really focus on the key strategy efforts of the firm? We're really focused now on products and solutions. So I need to have lawyers and people who understand products and solutions, and maybe I can figure out a way to have NDAs done differently, or by the business, or done off of a self-serve kind of arrangement. So it's really skating to where the puck will be and trying to understand where are we going and putting my effort and energy there. And then the last thing, or two things left, I guess, think about it over a time frame. There's near, mid, and long term. And so what do I need to do immediately? And what do I need, what is the long-term play out there? And then it's the balance of that risk and reward. I think all lawyers have the obligation to advise your clients about what the options are and what risk could be. But we really need to lean forward on some of those key strategy efforts so that we're not hindering the company. So that's a lot there, but that's what I mean. It's a 3D puzzle.
That's a really helpful framework. And I think this notion of having clarity about what success looks like makes so much sense. And I think about that in the work that I do with clients. But this issue around pain, I think, is a lot more variable given the uncertainty of today's environment. So I guess I would ask, within the framework that you've described, how is it acutely different, or what is heightened in an uncertain climate like we're in now?
People. The people element of this is so much bigger now. The uncertainty of knowing where you're going to work. Are you going to be in your mother's basement? Are you going to be, in your office? When you are asked to go to your office, are you undertaking things that you think are just not worth the risk? So the people element of this is so much larger. And where you have people who are looking for career growth and want to learn and do new things, yet at the same time want to make sure that they're safe. Trying to help balance that is a huge change.
Absolutely. And the issue about challenges I want to stick with for a moment. And given the myriad of challenges that employees are facing right now relating to the pandemic and racial inequity and job and market uncertainty, how do you demonstrate yours and the company's empathy and support for your employees and your colleagues while maintaining very real focus on your team to get the necessary work done?
Right. So let me tell you what we did. And I think that might be helpful. So we took very fast action when on the onset of the pandemic. I think it was a Friday. We did a test of our teleworking capability. And on Monday, more than 95% of us were working from home. It was that fast. I have not been in my office since the beginning of March. I have a feeling it's going to look like the Winston Churchill war rooms. We're going to go back in at some point, and it's going to be the exact same thing. I was speaking with someone yesterday who said that they're concerned because they know they left their lunch in the refrigerator, and they're just hoping somebody threw it out, or they're going to have to throw out the refrigerator at this point. So we wanted to act fast, but we wanted to think about our goals and our priorities. So as a leadership team, we set 3 goals. We said we are all in this together. It's the same storm, but it's different boats. I've heard that a number of times. But we looked at how are we going to approach this. First thing we said, we are going to keep our people, their family, and our communities safe. The second thing is we were going to continue to work on the critical missions for our clients and make sure, and thirdly, we were making sure that we were resilient economically and financially. And so with those as guideposts, that allowed us to focus on the biggest items. That allowed us the freedom actually to say other things didn't matter. By saying we were focusing on our people and our communities and our families, we also reassured them that it wasn't about them being cogs in the wheel. We wanted to consider their families. We wanted to make sure that our communities heard us and knew we were there to help. And so having those three things outlined really made a huge difference. We then took $100 million out of the business, reprioritized it, and said, we're going to use this to make sure those three elements are met. And fortunately, our business has not had nearly the problems others have had. And so we are slowly taking the 100 parts of the 100 million out and giving it back to the business where it was from investments or other aspects. So that's how we approached it.
And did you have those three priorities set as part of the fabric of your business previous to this, or was it something that was kind of integral to the business, but not necessarily formulated in that way, and it really became formulated and clear once the pandemic took hold?
That's a great question. I mean, I think we have echoes from each of those three in everything we do, that it is very much a part of our purpose and values. Our mission is to empower people to change the world. And so you have people there out at the outset. This is a people business, and this is what makes Booz Allen special, are these the people I get to work with every day. The resiliency of the business, we owe that to our stakeholders. We owe that to our shareholders. And so that's there as well, but I don't think we ever said it. And then thirdly, our clients, you know, that connectivity. I think everyone who works at Booz Allen really feels that connectivity to client mission. 97% of what we do is for the US government. And so keeping the homeland safe, keeping our people in uniform. And I should say today we're recording this, it's Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day to all those of you. Thank you for your service.
Yes.
So it is an intersection there. But I think it was the first time that I can recall that we put it out that clearly.
Very interesting. And I think I want to extend this notion of having that clarity internally of what your priorities are, and ask another question, really directing more towards then how do you engage with outside counsel and other legal service providers. So you want to remain agile and be responsive, but you're also juggling increasing work streams and shrinking budgets, as you talked about this $100 million allocation. So how have you evolved in terms of using outside counsel and other legal service providers?
Sure, it's a great question. And I think it's something that, you know, I've been practicing for 35 years or so, and you've been in the business as well. The more we ask the question, sometimes the answers are the same. I'm really waiting for the big change in our industry to see where it goes. But we've brought a lot of stuff in-house for a number of different reasons. One, the cost. Obviously, it is much more cost efficient to do it in-house. And two, this is as much, for me and with my team, it's as much about building people's careers as it is solving problems for the company. The second one has to take place, but I also really value the ability to build a team, to see how they're doing, to grow and progress. And so having them have the opportunity to do the hairiest, most bleeding edge kinds of things is really important to me. Having said that, you can't have all of, you know, I don't staff to the peaks. We can't do that. It's too costly. And so thinking about expertise, I will look for those outside counsel who have that one skill set. For example, you know, antitrust law, for, you know, that is a big topic at the DOJ right now. I think I don't anticipate having a specialist in-house on that front. So finding out who the best are in that front on that. I also gravitate towards outside counsel with whom they want to invest in us, and we will invest in them. So it doesn't. These are obviously organizations with long-standing relationships with us or with me. I have some lawyers with whom I go back years. Now, that doesn't preclude new folks coming in and providing support, but I want to make sure that they want to invest in us in the same way we want to invest in them. And so that's how I've been looking at it most recently.
Without naming any names, are there any real standouts for you since the pandemic where you've heard from either outside counsel or other legal service providers who've just really made an impact in your life and improved your life and just the quality of the legal services? Are there any real distinguishing examples you can provide?
So there are, yes, is the short answer to that question. At the outset of the pandemic, for example, I had to set up a folder in my inbox with just all the newsletters and here's what you need to know. And I wouldn't read them. I just had to get them out of my inbox into COVID-19 outside counsel, I think is what I called it.
Right.
And at the end of a week, I went back and I had 2,000 emails in there. It was ridiculous. And they were not helpful. They distracted from what it was that I was trying to do, working with our crisis management team to set up, how we were going to handle this. And I know they put in a lot of work, effort, and energy, and I'm sure they were all very well written. But the ones who were most helpful, the outside counsel who we actually ended up using in certain cases, reached to us, not with a newsletter, but a, hey, how are you doing? We're thinking about you. We know that your project XYZ may be having an issue because of, let me know if we can do anything. Or even just the, hey, we're thinking about you. Wanted to check in. The people who actually took the time to demonstrate that they had some mind share for us were the ones that would encourage me to call back. And so some of them did get, the opportunity, and we got the opportunity to work with them. I think those were the best ones. Another example, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I want to hear it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Another example, we were looking at antibody testing and what was going to happen with the vaccines. And we do work in the healthcare industry. So we were actually able to arrange through one of our law firms a conversation with one of the large clinics that is on the forefront of treating this. And that connection, acting as a convener for us, it was value add for the clinic because we were able to tell them what was going on in the government and things that were happening there. But at the same time, we were hearing live from the front line, if you will, what was happening with antibody testing, et cetera. And so acting as that convener role, that was hugely important. I actually don't think they billed us for that time. I want them to make money. Don't get me wrong. I think the relationship with outside counsel is hugely important, but it's not exclusively something where I want something for free. I see the value. When I see the value, that's what I'm more than happy to pay for.
It's interesting to think about what you're underscoring because when I do give talks on communication, one of the things I talk about is the importance of knowing your audience and what their needs are. And what you're underscoring is that the outside counsel that actually reached out and asked and said, how can we be helpful, or anticipating you may be facing X, Y, and Z, but can we help? That's one thing interesting. And another piece of it is when I do speak on networking, I talk a lot about how you want to be the problem solver. You want to be the point person. And even if, in that situation, maybe they're not delivering legal services, maybe they're not billing you for that, you want to be the go-to, because that is a lot of power actually to be the go-to. You can direct an opportunity And you can remember that this person solved my problem last time, and maybe they'll solve it again. And maybe next time they are the one who can answer it personally and be the law firm in that case or the legal service provider. So I think this is really interesting. And I want to also ask that question internally. You mentioned your focus on developing your colleagues' careers. Again, not naming names, but what types of employees have really been standouts to you in this environment? What are the kinds of things they've done? What types of characteristics have they exhibited that have really differentiated them as part of a member of your team?
Sure. Agility, agility, agility. We've had some folks who, have an expertise in employment law, for example, and their day job is to help us manage the 27,000 people that we have, whether it's, benefits or whether it's defensive things or whatever it is, they're employment lawyers. But we had a crisis and we pulled together the crisis management team, which is a fairly large team, encompasses all aspects of the organization. And we had some folks who just said, put me in, coach. Whatever you need me to do. Is it related to people? Great. I feel comfortable there. Is it not? Super. I will give it my all. And so that agility has really caused them to stand out. And I now, think about those people when I'm thinking about, as you say, problem solver. I have an issue. Who can I get to help me with that? They're some of those very same people. I also think that's how you grow a career. In-house in particular, find a problem that is not being addressed, no matter where it is, address it, bring it forward, and then move on. You're not the expert in it, and we all need key expertise. And I sit there laughing because one of my titles is general counsel. I know a whole lot, but not broad and not necessarily deep. That's my job. And so to be able to move from one to the next, and in fact, very early on in my career, I am not an employment lawyer, but we didn't have coverage in that area, and I schooled myself up on it and proposed that they hire somebody for it because I'd been handling it and addressing it, and that helped progress my career. So I think that agility, that being able to step out of your comfort zone and just be that problem solver is really important.
And your remarks are also bringing together that notion of risk again, that you don't feel entirely comfortable, but you're that person who's the team player, you're raising your hand. You don't necessarily know it all, but you know enough to be able to be helpful, and you're willing to learn what you don't know and identify what you don't know. And I think that roll your sleeves up type of person right now seems to be valued more than anyone.
I think that's absolutely right. And one of the challenges that we recognize is it was easier to do that when A, it wasn't a crisis, and B, you could walk down the hall and talk to someone and say, I don't really know a whole lot about this, but here's what I'm thinking. Does that make sense to you? And it's a lot harder to do that now because there is no hallway. But we're trying to get, with technology on screen and Teams and Google Chat, whatever it is, so that people feel comfortable to do that. Because we do need to get back to that. That's how more junior lawyers learn. And being a lawyer is not necessarily, what you know, it's about how you apply it. It's about that judgment. And so I'm often thinking about how are we training our more junior team members to have that judgment. And if this continues for a lot longer, I think it's going to be a real shift in our culture and a real focus on differentiated training.
One of the conversations I've been having repeatedly with different lawyers about what they mourn about working from home is not having access to those casual conversations. And part of it is a social element and feeling more isolated, that there's not that chit chat at the water cooler or the coffee machine. But it's also about being able to casually ask for advice about something or just bounce an idea of somebody. And another interviewee I had recently, a woman named Kim Scott, who's a best-selling author on radical candor, she talked about one of the things that's really helpful in the workplace along these lines is to set up default 15-minute calls about 3 days a week that is just a touch base. And sometimes those will get canceled, but it's a way to be able to be in periodic touch with people so that it naturally can bounce those questions off somebody. And there's also more of a personal connection because when you're in that frequent touch with people, you can hear about their weekend or their Thanksgiving plans or whatever is coming up or just transpired. And it brings about a familiarity that and more of an ease in accessing those conversations. I don't know if you've tried anything along those lines or if there are any other tips you can share that are bringing more of a connection among your team members.
So we've tried some of that. I'm in the process now of doing coffee hours. It's actually 45 minutes with everyone on the team, skip level and otherwise. And we're setting them up, and I'm fitting in as many as I can to just really take some time to say, hey, how you doing?
Right.
And so most of them have been, where are you cocooning? How's it going with the family? Is that your dog over there? I have met more pets than I knew people had, which is great. I do have a sense of an individual now, much more so, and they me. So we've been in everybody's living rooms for the last six months. But so we've done some of that. We've had the happy hours. We've had wine tastings. We've had all kinds of things like that. And we've had, see, this is what happens when you have.
Very apropos. I want to come in and I'm like, I have my coffee, but
Exactly.
unfortunately we're still on the screen, but
That's right.
it's very well timed.
That's right. I didn't plan that, but we've also done broader chats. So we've had, I think, 15,000 people on a company-wide program, just so that people could get the opportunity to see leadership and to understand what we're thinking much more frequently. And those seem to, those fireside chats are really helpful. So it's both the individual one-on-one as well as more broadly, especially with the conversation about George Floyd and race and social equity since June. That's been hugely important as well, to make sure that you are listening to people and giving them the opportunities to speak and to hear you as well. The last thing on that is I have been so fortunate. When I walked in the door at Booz Allen, I was told there were two cardinal sins. The first was not to ask for help when you need it. And that is a real, that has been such an emphasis for everyone I've talked with and met with since I've been here. And the second cardinal sin is not to give help when asked. And you have to do both. And so for the first year I was here, I would, at the end of meeting with someone, say, what they would ask me, what can I do for you? And now I have the opportunity to say, what can I do for you? And sometimes it throws people off, but making them think about what they need and knowing that I'm committed to helping, that's hugely important.
I really like that. I think that by extending yourself generously that way, it really creates an environment where others want to do that. It's not a quid pro quo, but it sets a tone that everybody wants to be thinking and anticipating how can they be a resource to somebody else. And it really probably creates a wonderful culture that's the starting point and that's the presumption.
Right. Absolutely right. It is that open door.
And you mentioned before, that notion of that person rolling up their sleeves and jumping in on things, the people who are really agile. The flip side of that, which I could see sometimes being a detriment, is that those individuals end up, while you want them aligned with the business and the broader business goals, you also don't want them to sacrifice their own objectives, their own aspirations. So how do you balance that? Or is that something that we shouldn't be thinking about balancing in this current environment?
Well, I always think you have to have that balance. But there are more immediate things that are ongoing at this point in time. I think 6 months in, we've all settled, if you will, into what is this next normal. And what I'm trying to transition folks to think about now is what will be the second normal stage? What will that look like? And how can we retain the best of whatever this has been but also go back to, that what we are missing, what we are lacking, and thinking about things differently is very important. I had a conversation with a religious leader not too long ago who was bemoaning the fact that they were not able to sit, in a room with everyone and be with their community, be with their congregation. And then I heard another religious leader speak who said, yeah, that's I miss that too, but with this kind of environment, I can reach 10 times as many people. And so it's how you think about these things. And so I'm starting to try to get my teams to think about, what is it that we want to continue to do? The ability to work from home and save the commuting, that's an obvious one. So how are we going to manage who goes into the office? When do they go into the office? We need to start thinking about that, even though that's not yet on the radar for us at this point in time. But having individuals, and that's all in addition, unfortunately, to the day job. To your point, how do you goal set? Well, we still have to do the day job. We still have to defend the lawsuits, file the forms, and meet the needs of our clients. So that, for me, causes the one big problem I have, which is getting people to take time. We've just agreed as a leadership team, we are not going to schedule meetings the week of Thanksgiving to the extent that we can help it. Same for the week around Christmas. Just so people can stop, and you can work if you want. I'm not saying this is forced PTO, but just to take a breath, because people have been working so hard and I need them refreshed. I need
Right.
them to really get back to a more normal cadence.
I think that's a really thoughtful thing to do. And I think as leaders, if you model that behavior that week, it'll be a huge sense of relief for your colleagues, because even if they are working to just avoid the internal meetings and the volume of internal communications, it's going to compress their work considerably. And I think it's such an important symbol beyond the actual impact that it will have, which I'm sure will be considerable. I think it's terrific. I want to encourage our audience, again, if there are any questions in our limited remaining time, to put them in the chat. And I think that I actually want to ask you, and I'll come back to another question in a moment, but of those silver linings, you just mentioned all of those things that, what is the good that we can take with us? Are there any standouts for you already that you want to bring back to this next new normal?
So I do want to keep the personal connections that I think we have really grown to have. I don't know that we necessarily have to have bring a dog to work day, but we did have bring your dog to webcast. And so now I know everybody's pets. But it's that allows me to do something informally, which I had been doing formally before. I would like to sit down on a regular basis with my team and just ask them, the next coming 6 months, what is valuable to you? Do you want to, is it about money? Is it about time to be with your family? Is it about a learning goal? What is it? Because I believe that people's situations in life change every 6 months to a year. So if you can ask that regularly, you really can help them meet the demands that they have, their own personal goal setting, if you will. I still will do that, but doing that, seeing and having experienced the challenges and the opportunities and the fun that they have in their own lives gives it that much more of a personal feel to it. So when someone says, look, I appreciate all you're doing for me, but I really need to figure out how can I make a better bonus. I've got 2 kids going to college, my twins, but I now get that. I understood it. Now I feel it.
I find it really ironic. The first thing you said when I asked that question was that you want to retain the personal. And what is so ironic is that, of course, we're all virtual. We don't have the one-on-one face connect. We have the one-on-one. We don't have the FaceTime and the in-person connection. And how ironic that now we feel that much more personally connected. I know I have had that experience with many people in my life as well. It's distilled what's important and who's important and things like that. So I think that's one of the really fascinating things, is look at the things we've learned in a set of circumstances that is being facilitated through technology and not by in person, and how ironic that is. And same thing with the example you provided with the congregants, that this religious leader was saying that they have a greater impact by being remote as opposed to being in person with their community. And there are so many of those. Right before this call, I was presenting to a bar association committee, and they're doing work on attorney being, and we talked about one of the big benefits of the virtual environment right now is people who are struggling with mental health issues can access services and resources more readily, because maybe they'd be embarrassed to show up because of the terrible stigma in that room, in that bar association event with potential peers or colleagues or adversaries. But because they're doing these programs on an anonymous basis, they can access these resources differently. So I think it really commands all of us to think more creatively about, again, the lessons we've learned and the benefits we can glean from this very unfortunate but real experiment that we've all been undergoing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Telemedicine is a great example of that.
Absolutely. So in our remaining time, I want to ask for a parting message from you, Nancy. Either something that we haven't had a chance to touch on that you want to make sure is part of this conversation before we wrap up, or something we just briefly touched on that you want to underscore or clarify.
Sure. So I'm a huge fan of Professor Angela Duckworth.
She's
Um,
amazing.
she's great. And I think we can't have a conversation about setting goals and prioritization and living through a crisis without recognizing and talking about the need for grit. That's what she writes about, or one of the areas she focuses on. And you need to have grit in order to see out or see through the completion of any of these goals. It's not easy to do what we've been talking about, whether you're talking about career setting goals or whether you're talking about how do you meet the demands of a $10 billion organization. You have to sit down and have what my Nana used to call stick to itiveness. It's really about making sure that you are in it for the long time, that you're pursuing it with passion and dedication and focus and perseverance. And you can't have all of the above without the grit.
I love that you came to this point around grit and you're concluding on that, because in some ways it's a really nice full circle from how you started and talked about knowing what success looks like at the end and then figuring out essentially how to get there and plotting it out. And you talked about the three-dimensional means of envisioning that framework. And I think that's part of what people need to do. And in a time of uncertainty that we're in right now, it's harder for people to do that. But even if you've misjudged what that future looks like, to be able to set a goal about what success looks like, let's say a year from now, and then work backwards about how to achieve it, I think that's a really positive way to go about it, but also underscores the importance of grit in getting you there and going through the various trials and tribulations that we're all going to be going through. So I think that's really important. I want to just say, as my parting message is, I loved what you said. What can I do for you? So Nancy, I'm going to follow up with you and hope you answer that question to see if I can be a resource to you. But I think we all need that right now. I think we all need people who are available to help and be a resource in a time where people are really struggling and they need help. And it's okay to ask, and it's great to give.
Great.
So with that, Nancy, thank you for giving
Thank
this
you very
interview
much.
opportunity to me. It's just a pleasure to be with you again.
So good to see you again. And I
It
look forward
really
to
is.
that next conversation.
Me too. And I want to thank Axiom for hosting today's conversation. And this is recorded. So for those who didn't have the opportunity to join, I want to share it, Nancy, obviously, with your colleagues. And it's just terrific. Stay safe and well and in touch. And I too look forward to next time.
Take good care.
Bye.